It all starts at Janin University on an ordinary afternoon. A boy named Song is watching a movie on his laptop, saying he took a break because he is sick. A monster tries to scare him, but he yawns, saying it's too boring to watch. Despite being sick, he wasn't very sleepy, until he received a notification that he had been added to something. A guy named Lord of the Yellow Mountain seemed to want to be his friend. He found the nickname strange, but thought it might be a classmate and accepted. Immediately, he received another notification and realized it was to add him to a chat group. The boy decided to accept, though he was sleepy because of the medication. At that moment, he saw a message saying he was a member and should say hi. However, he ended up falling asleep. People started talking a lot in the group. They commented that the Lord of the Yellow Mountain had brought in another member. As always in groups, there is a pervert, saying if it's a woman, she should share the size of the 3 most important things in a photo. People responded that he would have to apologize to the guy from the Yellow Mountain. The guy with red hair appears on the screen, he gets scared, slams his hand on the table, and says he will make everyone know the fury of his blade. Another guy responds that it's fine and challenges him to a duel. The guy with red hair is known as Saber, and he is extremely strong. However, he knows he has no chance against the guy that responded. Everyone laughs in his face and talks about the new member's entry. While Saber is there, devastated, people are anxious to see the first message from the guy who just joined. That's when our protagonist wakes up, saying he remembers being added to a group, but that thing seemed weird. As soon as he looked, there were already 72 messages, and he was impressed with the activity. However, seeing that everyone was talking about powers and battles, he realized he had been added to a bunch of lunatics, which wasn't bad since he liked weird people. He just wanted to know who the Lord of the Mountain was who added him. What he didn't know is that joining that group completely changed his life. Training in the morning, he was kind of sad, thinking that lately he had given up on all his dreams. He studied because he had to study. So in a way, reading those crazy conversations in the group was kind of funny. Once again at home, he watched a movie and was dying of sleep. Those horror stories were getting more and more boring, and he decided to sleep, dreaming of saving the princess and being the hero. Meanwhile, in the group, in a conversation, they ask why the guy from the Yellow Mountain added this boy. He comments that the person he added is a genius, but people seem to disagree. Then he realizes that by 1 digit, he got the person's number wrong and added the wrong one, and reveals that the spot that was supposed to be for a genius girl went to a random student. The guy who had asked for the photos is now devastated for having flirted with the boy. With that, the chat people start asking to expel the person. However, sitting in his chair, the Lord of the Yellow Mountain says he will lose face if he expels someone, and decides to try divination. He focuses his powers on a notebook and starts to see the future. The problem is that he is terrible at divination, and every attempt he makes goes completely wrong. In the end, he can't predict anything. And because of this uncertainty, he tells the group that he will leave the boy in the group for now. People seem to complain, but he says he has more things to resolve. While the protagonist in bed was feeling that his body was getting weaker, he decides, as always, to take a look at the group and discovers he was added by mistake, and the people there even have daughters. Our boy thought he would lose interest in this group after a while. However, 10 days had already passed, and he woke up once again bored. As always, the first thing in the morning was to take a look at what people were saying. They took everything so seriously that sometimes it was believable. He received a message from the medicine master who said he had formulated a basic elixir. He was impressed that this guy who always sends one word had written so much. At this point, he already knew the personality of each member. The Northern River Cultivator was always online and was crazy. The Triple Crazy Saber was a troublemaker and was also online all day. The 7th Clan guy wanted to fight everyone and was also online all day. The Medicine Master didn't speak much, but he was another one who never left the group. The Vagrant Monk only sent emojis. And the only one he was sure was a woman was called Soft Feather, who was also addicted to the group. The Medicine Master shares the perfect recipe and the entire preparation process. Our boy seems to find it interesting and decides to research the ingredients. Some are extremely common and easy to find, while others he had never heard of. He starts to wonder if these guys are so delirious that they're talking about things that don't even exist. Afraid that people might try to prepare some idiotic concoction, he wants to send a message telling everyone not to do it. But just as he's about to send it, someone sends a smiley face emoji. The person says they tried the recipe and it worked very well. A so-called master of medicine thanks them, and the protagonist finds it confusing that someone made this so-called body-tempering elixir. He becomes wary and starts jotting down the entire recipe, thinking it must be a slow-acting poison. Maybe no one will die quickly, but surely it will cause harm. Assuming he'll ask his cousin about it, and in the meantime, he just hopes the group members don't die. Meanwhile, in a place called Butterfly Spirit, a girl walks on water, stating she'll use the time the old man is away to escape and capture the ghost she so desperately wants to find. Then we see the protagonist's cousin and his mother discussing how strange this recipe is. They are already considering having him committed. Our boy wakes up. It had been a nightmare. He realizes it's better not to mention this to others or they'll think he's really crazy. Seeing that it's sunny today, he wonders if he should exercise, maybe, but not before playing a couple of League of Legends matches. The prodigy boy even gets a pentakill. A little while later, it's already noon, and he closes the game. But once again, the group is flooded with notifications. Now it's the guy from the Northern King saying the recipe worked perfectly, while another guy, calmly making tea, comments about the monk who only sends emojis, while the so-called Saber is asking the girl Soft Feather to send him a message. People comment that he disappeared, and he explains that another brother went to visit him and he got beaten up. At that, Soft Feather asks what he wants. He says he'd like to pay a visit. She tells him he's an old man, and the poor guy feels devastated. Meanwhile, the protagonist is laughing at their stories without ever saying anything. What's strange is why there are so many crazy people who seem to take it seriously. He starts to wonder if it's real or if maybe he's going crazy like everyone else. Remembering the dreams, he concludes that he can't become one of them. However, just as he's about to chat, the Northern guy and the South Clan guy are talking about something happening in City Etch and someone's advancement. The protagonist knows that City Etch is nearby and wonders if he would see anything from there. Pulling his hair, he says he's going crazy to believe what these guys are saying. He approaches the balcony, confident that no lightning or tribulation will fall since it's a beautiful day. Elsewhere, a guy with a sword on his back tells a girl that the 16th is coming. She calls him 7th and says she's ready. Heading to the bookstore, the protagonist says that every time he reads a new story, time seems to fly. From inside, he observes that the sun is so strong it feels like summer. He hands the book to the clerk, who says, as always, it's 1 yuan per day of delay, until everyone hears thunder out of nowhere. They turn around startled, and the protagonist finds it strange. Above City Edge, a bunch of clouds appeared, and indeed the sun had disappeared. Outside, people commented that it was very sudden, while our boy Song found everything very strange. The girl was on top of the building, while a little boy stretched out his hands, saying he would receive the power of the heavens. But he was in front of the protagonist like an idiot. He kept shouting until the clouds clear and the sun is back. He found it all very confusing and wondered if those thunderclaps were a hallucination, while the boy ran away, saying he was now immortal. He remembers previous messages from the group. The event indeed came from City Etch, so did it make any sense? Staring at his phone, he questioned if it was all real. At the same time, he concluded that he was as deluded as that child who thinks he's immortal. Seeing the child getting scolded for being an idiot, he realizes he's becoming a fool too. He decides he'll leave the group as soon as his cousin confirms that the remedy is fake. The girl from the rooftop was passing by him, but she was beaten up. Gaining power wasn't easy at all. Back home, he sends the recipe to his cousin and asks if he would die eating it. He won't leave the group for now because someone might die from consuming it. Once again, he goes to his PC and sees 99 notifications. He's tempted to leave, but curiosity gets the better of him. One of the guys asks if the member advanced without any problems. The guy called Master of Trigrams says he did a divination and everything went well. But people trust his divination so little that they say the girl definitely got hurt. They ask if anyone near City H can check to see if she's still alive. The consensus in the group is that whatever the seer says, the opposite is true. Our boy laughs again, saying it looks like these people have known each other for a long time. The Northern King guy asks if anyone is in City Etch, and everyone says no. Song knows he lives nearby, but he doesn't know these people. Besides, it might not be a good idea to get involved with these crazies. Then Soft Feather says she's preparing to go to City J, so she'll pass by. Our protagonist gets excited to see that she'll pass near his city. The group decides to let her check on the girl and mentions being worried about the guy's divination. If he said it's good fortune, it's definitely bad. The diviner bangs the table, furious that everyone is insulting him, and calls for a duel. The tea guy says fine, he accepts the duel. Meanwhile, the protagonist wonders if these guys will actually gather at the Xingxin Palace just to duel. He imagines two guys fighting the dragon and a tiger and thinks he's really going crazy. Where is his mind going? Another day dawns, and he turns on the PC and sees news about the lightning. He seems to ignore it and gets a message from the campus. The message talks about a group of bullies being wiped out. People are curious to know who beat up those bastards, considering everyone wanted to finish them off. The protagonist seems to pay no attention to it while those lightning strikes linger in his mind. He decides to take another look at the group, thinking he needs to leave it. At the same time, everyone is there, and he wonders if these people ever sleep. At a waterfall, a guy sneezes. It's the Northern River cultivator who says people can't stop thinking about him. In the group, the medicine master posts a photo of a plant. The Northern River guy recognizes it as a venomous dragon seed and asks what the alchemist wants. He says he wanted one of these, and the guy says if he finds one, he'll deliver it. Seeing the name has venom, the protagonist gets a bit scared. He scrolls up the group and sees people talking about how in City Edge, one of the members wiped out a bunch of people, but no one died. That's when he connects this conversation with the people who got beaten up at school. Knowing it's close to City Etch and was a bunch of delinquents, he's sure it must be them. No, he dismisses the idea. He's really going crazy believing in these coincidences. He decides to go for a run to relax his mind and forget about those people, especially those lightning bolts and the ferry coming to the city. Meanwhile, at the airport, everyone is impressed. People are even texting, saying they've never seen such a beautiful woman. The girl walks while looking at her phone, saying she hates places like this, full of people and easy to get lost in. Curious, she checks the gossip again. Only Soft Feather is there, commenting that she arrived in the city, but is afraid of getting lost. She was supposed to meet Mr. 7, but he hasn't shown up yet. Someone suggests activating GPS, and the protagonist laughs, saying they're forgetting the character. They should be talking about maps and compasses, not GPS. In the chat, the girl says she tried using it, but is still lost. And another says, if that's the case, she should just fly out. Our boy laughs. These people never changed, talking about flying in the city. The Northern River guy then asks where she's going, and she says she wants to reach the Ghost Lamp Temple on Luoxin Street. The name of that street reminds the protagonist of something. While Soft Feather is looking at her phone, a taxi driver stops and asks if she needs a ride. She asks if he knows where the Ghost Lamp Temple is. He says he's never heard of it and asks where the street is. She says it's Luoxin Street, and he says he knows that street. He lives there, but doesn't know any temple. She throws her bag over her shoulder and says she'll go to that street then. With that, the guy is taken aback but drives her. She then tells the chat that she's heading to the temple, thinking in the taxi that it's been a long time since she was alone. Meanwhile, in a place known as the Foodie Paradise, because there are so many people selling good street food. Our protagonist stood in front of a place and wondered what it was called. Then he remembered it was the Luoxin Street district. He recalled that was where Soft Feather was heading, but imagined there must be several streets with that name. Some guys on the nearby bench were rating the girls passing by. Clearly, someone needed to call the police to keep an eye on them, until one of them shouted, 100 points. Obviously, it was Soft Feather arriving with her suitcase. At that moment, our boy had his heart stolen as she just passed by, and he was left desolate. Even he joined the game, saying that she really was 100 points. The blonde guy stood up, saying that in this case he had to act. He walked towards her, telling everyone to watch. 5 seconds later, he was back crying, saying he didn't have the courage to talk to her because she was too beautiful. Our protagonist laughed, went to a butcher shop, and when he was leaving, he ran into Soft Feather again. He wondered if it was a coincidence or inevitable, but as soon as she passed by, he bowed his head, thinking he was really going crazy lately, until someone mentioned a ghost temple, which caught his attention. He looked back and saw her leaving, wondering if it might be her. He decided to check his phone and saw that she had mentioned she arrived on the street and that there were a lot of people. Knowing she left the airport 2 hours ago, he was sure she was on the wrong street. Apparently, she confused the street with the same name but in City J. Once again, the boy didn't believe in coincidences. He said no, there's no way it's Soft Feather. Then a voice message arrived. He clicked to listen, and we see a bit before when she recorded the message, unsure because the Northern River guy wasn't responding. At the moment she was passing, he played the message with her voice. She turned, realizing it was what she had just sent. She began to wonder if that boy who looked like a teenager was one of the seniors in the group. Our boy smelled a perfume, and then she came up to his face and asked if he belonged to the 9 Provinces group. Our boy fell and asked if she was Soft Feather. She said yes and asked what his Taoist name was. Our boy knew she must be about 19 years old but called him senior, which was weird. She was there radiant, while he wondered why she thought he was so old. He had no idea what this Taoist name thing was. So he just said his name was Song Shuhan. Saying to forget about the Taoist name thing, she said she understood some like to hide it. He then asked her to stop calling him senior and just call him Song. She said that was very disrespectful, and he said it didn't matter. Enough with the senior thing. He then thought about his name and asked if he was there to help her. Our boy was in love and asked if she wanted him to carry her suitcase. She said no, and he mentioned the place she wanted to reach and said she was wrong. She was startled and asked if it wasn't Luoxin Street. He replied that it was but not the street in City J and told her to look at the GPS. But her battery was dead, and he said to use his. Seconds later, she said his battery was also dead. He asked if she was in a hurry to get there, and she said, unfortunately, the sooner the better. Otherwise, her father would scold her if she took too long. He said if that was the case, she could use the computer in his room to find out how to get there. Ah, you silly dog, you can't charge your phone in a vendor, but you can take her to your room, huh? She asked if this so-called dormitory was the place of solitude for his practice. Our boy was confused, it's just a regular dorm. Since you can't take a girl into a male dormitory, he looked around and managed to get her to the room. As soon as they entered, he asked what she wanted to drink, and she said she felt like having some spiritual green tea. Our boy had forgotten that she was one of the crazies. He said, unfortunately, he only had something called orange juice. She found it confusing since every practitioner consumes it. She concluded that he must be practicing an earthly life training. So she bowed, asking for the legendary orange juice. Looking online, he said it would take about 5 hours, and she asked if a taxi driver would go that far. Our boy answered no, and she asked what they would do. He was confused by this thing about what they would do since when were the two of them together. She apologized for not asking permission. Then, with tears in her eyes, she said she had a terrible sense of direction and was scared to death. He said he wanted to help, but he couldn't because he had class tomorrow afternoon. She asked hypothetically, if he didn't have class, would he be able to go? Feeling a bit awkward, he said that if that were the case, then yes, while thinking that it wouldn't happen since the class had been scheduled for a long time. He checked the weather and found nothing unusual, and she asked to use the computer for a bit. He grabbed his phone and she started looking up a lot of information, finding our boy's profile, the professor, and the class schedule. The girl was more cunning than he imagined and thought that if a little accident happened to this professor, he wouldn't have class. Then she noticed the notebook beside. He had also noted the recipe the guy posted in the group. She imagined he was trying to improve the recipe and immediately asked how many he could make at once. Seeing that she had noted the recipe, he was afraid she would think he was one of the crazies and said he hadn't made any. She questioned if he was trying to improve it before practicing, and he just gave a thumbs up, thinking it was good to play along. To change the subject, he said he hadn't made it because he hadn't found the ingredients yet. She came closer and said that if that was the case, she would send 2 boxes of ingredients when she got back home. He thanked her and asked for her documents to book her ticket. While she was at the window, he thought she was beautiful and kind. It's just a shame she lived in this world of illusions. Meanwhile, she activated her self-created glasses that allowed her to project her vision elsewhere. She took a panoramic view of the city and detected the professor at his house talking to his daughter. She apologized and said he would be compensated later, but today he had to go to the hospital. Something seemed to lift his leg, causing him to fall and hurt himself. With that, she solved the little problem. She returned to the room and told him to book a ticket for himself too because she thought he might not have class after all. Then a message appeared on the computer saying tomorrow's professor was replaced. While he complained about the change, she was angry that it still wasn't resolved. But if she already sent one to the hospital, she would send the other one too. The poor guy was walking his dog when he felt a cold front. There she went again with the glasses, saying that when everything was over, she would compensate. She approached the computer and he said her ticket was booked. Then he received a new message from university saying there wouldn't be class tomorrow. Our boy found all this very strange while she looked at him glowing. The next day, he told her they should go and she said she was eager to find the temple. Our boy responded that they should get there first and worry about that later. On the train, he thought she was so beautiful that she could be the female lead in a story. And normally in this scene, a bunch of guys should approach and he would end up dealing with them all. But he was there, dying of sleep as nothing of the sort happened. She was also tired and slept on his shoulder, making him blush. Sometime later, people announced their arrival, and she woke up, drooling. They found the weak point of the crazy one. She asked where they would go now, and he said they would get a place to stay and then look for the temple. At the hotel, he asked the receptionist about the temple, and she said she didn't know about it. But a girl with purple hair passing by heard everything. She called someone and informed them that people were looking for the temple. The mustached guy asked about their strength, and she said the woman seemed strong, but the man was ordinary. But the strange thing was that she called him senior. The guy told her to be careful with both of them, while thinking that it had taken more than 60 years for the owner of that place to appear. Walking through the city, they seemed lost, and she said she was sure it was there. When her mother was pregnant, she took her father's psychic abilities to create a projection and observe the region. Our boy thought he had finally gone mad. He asked if there was any news from the northern guy, and she said he had sent new messages. But in the group, he said he couldn't send anyone to help. However, she said it was okay, and the two of them could manage. Song said if that was the case, he would continue to help her. They found an old friend of Song's who had a grandfather who had lived there for a long time. When asked about the temple's location, the man said it was impressive that young people knew about it. Soft Feather asked if they knew where the temple was. The man replied to head east into a small forest and find a cemetery. Near there, she would find the temple. She asked why the temple was in a cemetery, and he said it happened 60 years ago when everything was demolished. She said it didn't make sense since the place was private property. The man responded that she was smart but explained that a foreigner offered a high price. After the purchase, the foreigner left and never returned. The owner, thinking the guy had died, decided to sell it to someone else, and then it was destroyed. Soft Feather asked if all the members of the Huangbap family were dead. The man explained that yes, less than a year after the temple was destroyed, half of the family had died. She said it was obvious that would happen since the temple housed multiple souls. Anyone and everyone associated with the destruction would be cursed. Hearing this, the old man told her to wake up and stop believing in myths. The protagonist laughed at her, and she felt a little embarrassed. At 11 p.m., he called for her and asked why they were going to the temple so late. She said it was easier to find spirits at night and assured him he didn't need to worry because she would protect him. In front of a tombstone, she said that was where the temple used to be. She advised them to get into formation. She opened her suitcase, which emitted golden light, and started scattering something as she walked. Our boy, dying of sleep, wondered why he was playing Ghost Hunter at such an hour. Meanwhile, in the cemetery, Soft Feather began to dance. He found her wonderful but thought it was a very unique hobby. Watching her performance, he decided it would be good to capture a photo of it. His phone fell to the ground, and when he looked, it was on top of that herb the guy posted in the group. While dancing, she noticed two spirits surrounding her, which was strange since her father had sealed only one. At that moment, both spirits charged at her, and she activated her talismans. She started attacking with a multitude of talismans, confident she would easily win. But the spirits seemed to resist, and she used an ability from the Butterfly Island. Once they fell to the ground, she knew she just needed to finish the seal. But then one of them leaped toward the protagonist. She called out to Song, telling him to be careful, and also leaped toward him. Our boy was engrossed with the plant the medicine guy posted in the group. Knowing how crazy she was, he wanted to hide it so she wouldn't think of using it and pulled it from the ground. But a golden energy surged and everything around cracked. Yet to him, everything seemed normal, and he asked what happened. Soft Feather was impressed. From her perspective, the two spirits couldn't do anything to the boy. He just executed a plan and pulled the dragon plant at the right moment, which was their weak point. Now she saw him in a new light and said she was eager to learn more from the senior. However, she couldn't let him think she was weak, so she threw 2 seals at the spirits and closed them. Seeing butterflies around her, he wondered if the spirits were real. At that moment, she thanked him, saying that if it weren't for him, it would have escaped. Our boy just laughed, and she offered him one of the spirits, but he said it was of great value and she could keep it. He didn't want to get involved with the spirits, but she insisted that because he had helped so much on this trip, he should keep one. Seeing that she would insist, he accepted, thinking that since it was sealed, it wouldn't be a problem. And with that, they were on their way back. The man watching them thought it was a good thing he didn't intervene. The boy was much stronger than he had imagined, but now he would somehow have to recover the spirits he lost. This man was also being watched by another in a tree. He notified someone else that the spirit sealing was successful, but he was curious to know more about this Song Chung gang and the guy who was hunting them. The next day, it was time for Soft Feather to go home, and our protagonist asked if she would be okay. She said yes, since it was easy to get to the airport, and thanked him. She approached, asking for an address, saying she wanted to send the boxes with the ingredients as thanks. He said it was fine, and just to get her on her way, gave her a paper with his number. Seeing her leave, he thought this craziness was finally over. What he didn't know was that it was about to get worse. She went to the group and told everyone that Senior Song from the Jianggang region was amazing. The Northern River guy was impressed and congratulated her. And a while later, our boy was back to his usual life in class. He had the spirit in a necklace and was feeling a strange coldness. But ever since he started wearing this necklace, it seemed like his memory was perfect and he could remember the entire class. Remembering what she had said about it being powerful, he began to wonder if maybe it wasn't all fake. Could those crazies in the group be telling the truth? At that moment, someone opened the door and called for Student Song. Our boy was all confused and asked what the guy wanted. The bearded man smiled broadly and said there were 2 large deliveries for him. Since it was a VIP delivery, he needed to sign to receive it. He found this confusing until he remembered who it must have come from. He then asked where the items were, and the professional guys said they were at the entrance, just waiting for him to confirm the delivery. Walking down the corridor and seeing security next to the delivery, he was sure it wasn't anything normal. 2 gigantic boxes were surrounded by 4 bodyguards. Embarrassed, the protagonist asked if this was normal, and the guy said it was only because the sender paid extra. Looking at the document, he saw it was indeed sent by Soft Feather, and with that, the guys said goodbye and left. Opening the boxes, he knew they must contain the ingredients for the group's recipe. Inside, he saw various herbs, all extremely well preserved, and he wondered if they really would strengthen bones and muscles as in the stories. Now he was getting curious to know if it worked. He took everything to his room and remembered he would need a furnace. He knew that would be impossible, so he needed to find a substitute. Staring at a frying pan, he was sure it wouldn't work. But looking at everything else he had, it seemed to be the only option. He organized the ingredients and started preparing the recipe. Soft Feather had noted everything necessary, so he just needed to follow each step she mentioned. Some parts were confusing, but he decided not to ask the group to avoid getting more involved with those crazies. The only option was the electric stove, but he hoped it wouldn't cause any problems. Seeing the smoke rise, he thought it was too easy, just like cooking pasta. The recipe mentioned being careful with temperatures, but since everything he was using was electric, it probably wouldn't be a problem. The only strange thing was that it looked like actual broth. He added another herb, saying all he wanted was proof that these powers existed. But it only looked like a normal soup, and he realized nothing had changed. Strangely though, the necklace started reacting, and he realized some of the reactions described in the recipe were happening. He knew he had to increase the temperature for the dewgrass to take effect. It then fell into the water and began to dissolve. Following the recipe and using modern tools, he thought of various ways to prepare it. He was less interested in getting it right and more interested in understanding the process. He had reached ingredient number 41, and the mixture was almost ready. As soon as he added it, a black smoke rose. He noticed that in an instant, half the water was gone and a horrible smell filled the room. He remembered that the northern guy and Soft Feather had said they failed before getting it right. He knew his friends would return in 2 hours, so he decided to keep going with the rest of the ingredients to practice as much as possible before they arrived. Once again, he made mistakes, and strangely, the medicines seemed to be separating instead of combining. He tried increasing the pressure in the pan, and with that, the mixture whistled and exploded. Once again, a terrible smell filled the room, as if all the bad things had fused. He opened the window saying it was terrible, but lifting the lid, he saw it looked like the correct result. It was supposed to be a black, gooey, and smelly liquid. After all the hard work, he was determined to try it. He kept his phone ready in case he needed to go to the hospital. He started putting it in his mouth thinking it was just black sesame paste. As soon as he tasted it, he wondered if it was pure pepper. The mixture burned his entire throat, and he reached for his phone to call an ambulance. But at that moment, he felt another sensation. When the paste reached his stomach, he realized he was receiving energy. It was as if it were filling his body and strengthening him. At the same time, it felt like all impurities were being removed. Some girls were chatting by the window. When the shameless Song was walking by, taking off his shirt, The girls by the window were smitten, saying he had a 10 out of 10 body. Meanwhile, he wondered what the sticky stuff on him was. He realized that maybe the impurities were coming out with his sweat. Looking at his body, he was shocked to see that he now had a chiseled abdomen. The neck pain from gaming had also disappeared, and now his vision was incredible. Observing a trash can far away, he could clearly see a fly on it. Amazingly, his skin looked extremely healthy and clean. He didn't even know how to explain this to his friends, who would probably think he discovered some secret cream. Now he realized that maybe the group of crazies was right. This revelation left him confused, not knowing what to do. He could ignore all this and live like a normal person, or follow what those lunatics said, but he would live a life full of dangers. However, an exciting and troublesome life was incomparable to a monotonous one. He concluded that it was worth it. Now for the first time, he decided to speak in the 9 provinces group. The guy stressed by a mountain of books sent a greeting to his seniors. Soft Feather and Northern River didn't recognize him, and a guy surrounded by geese wondered if the boy had discovered the truth. Song in the group thanks Soft Feather for the ingredients, and with that, she knew who he was. He then revealed that he was added by mistake by the guy from the Yellow Mountain. The guy then asked why he decided to introduce himself now, if something had happened. The protagonist explained that he received the ingredients from Soft Feather, managed to make the potion, and became much stronger. The Northern River guy was impressed that he actually succeeded. Either that guy had incredible luck, or it was destiny acting in a strange way. He mentioned in the group that he wasn't sure it worked, but his body had strengthened. The Northern River guy asked how many sacred furnaces he used and how long it took to succeed. Confused, he said he used an electric stove and tried once. The Northern River guy was in disbelief, saying it was impossible to succeed on the first try, especially since he had failed countless times. The guy asked about the electric stove, wondering if it was a new tool for refining pills, and even Soft Feather was curious. He said it was a regular Weizen brand stove that everyone had at home. The guy then wanted to know what legendary pot he used, and he said it was just a regular soup pot. The Northern River guy was furious and asked if he could curse in the group. After a bit of ranting, he tagged the medicine master, who asked Song about the process and how things happened. Our boy was now comfortable chatting in the group. He began explaining the process, and the alchemy master kept questioning him. The guy asked why he used water, and he responded it was to avoid burning things at the bottom of the pot. The Northern River guy found it all very strange, imagining that Song was some genius swordsman who liked household items, which made no sense. He continued explaining until he reached the 41st step, where the water began to evaporate. Everyone commented that this was where they usually failed, and he said he added more water to prevent evaporation. That caught everyone's attention in the group, as no one had thought of that idea. The medicine master, after listening to all his plans, said he would practice with these ideas and return with the results. Meanwhile, the Northern River guy warned him that the path he wanted to follow was dangerous. Our boy didn't want to say anything since he had been laughing at the fools lately. The guy explained that he would have to join a sect or follow as a solitary person. Soft Feather offered to help through the Butterfly Spirit sect. Our boy asked what the difference was, and the Northern River guy explained that being free meant doing whatever you wanted, but it was a harder path. While joining a sect was good, you would be sent here and there. Our boy wasn't keen on joining a sect since he would have to leave his home, which wasn't what he wanted. He then asked how free cultivators strengthen themselves, and Soft Feather explained that sometimes group members ask for help and they receive rewards. Our boy got excited, saying this was the perfect path for him. He then announced in the chat that he would be a free cultivator, and the Northern River guy said he would help him. Our boy was excited, knowing that the guy would deliver a bunch of basic stuff, which was what he needed. But Soft Feather jumped in, saying that passing on those basic techniques would be perfect because she wanted to return to that city, especially because she wanted to take a few days to have fun. The alchemy guy chimed in, saying he wanted to see him prepare the recipe live in exchange for some resources as well. The Northern River guy was envious since he had struggled to get everything that the protagonist was about to receive. He showed interest, and our boy thought that the master would probably need the plant too. But then the guy said he would be there first thing in the morning. Our boy felt a bit awkward since he had school, but this time he decided to skip class. Staring at the screen happily, he thought he would receive many challenges, but in the end, he was receiving a lot of help. Our protagonist asked if he could share the successful recipe liquid with his family members. The Northern River guy replied that he could, while feeling touched by the boy who experienced such power and still wanted to share it. The guy explained some rules for sharing and then asked if he had felt any side effects. Our boy said no, and the guy asked if he had or had ever had a girlfriend. Song was confused by this question and said he had just entered university and was pretty chill. The guy continued asking about his love life, making our boy feel embarrassed. Then the Northern River guy explained that consuming this without a large amount of energy resulted in an explosion. But since he hadn't spent his energy with anyone, he survived. Our boy felt crushed, realizing he had been called a virgin in the group chat. The Immortal Trigram Master asked the Northern River guy why he recommended the free path for the boy. The guy explained that it was due to his age. No sect would accept Song, who started practicing after 18. But now that he was a free cultivator, he could help the boy get stronger himself. In his room, Song received a call from a friend named Tubo. talking about a friend who made a lot of money and inviting him to a party. He decided to go out to eat. Walking down the street, he believed he was near the right place. Passing by an alley, he was grateful those delinquents had disappeared. But then something caught his attention. Of course, there was a bunch of delinquents surrounding a girl. The rainbow-haired quartet needed to be arrested urgently. This was clearly an age gap problem going on. Immediately, Song jumped in, saying he wouldn't just stand by. The guy was about to say something to the girl when Song grabbed him by the hair and lifted him from behind. He found it strange that he was so strong, it felt like lifting a straw doll. The other thugs grabbed bats and came towards him. But now, confident, Song threw one friend at the other. With that, two were already unconscious on the ground, and the guys were scared. He told everyone to disappear, and they grabbed their friends and ran off. He then extended a hand to the girl and asked if she was okay. She ignored him and told him not to meddle. He wondered why she was so crazy, but decided to leave it be since he didn't want to be late for what his friend called him for. In class, he was wondering when the medicine master would arrive. His friend woke up, saying he heard a loud noise. It seemed like something was coming. The wall broke. A guy with pink hairpins appeared in the middle of the smoke, and a friend asked what the hell that was. With huge dark circles, the guy called out for Song and introduced himself as the medicine master. At that moment, our boy realized this guy was indeed a weirdo. Walking outside, the guy explained he used Tracker to find him. Then he activated a power to locate who had the body-tempering liquid and found the boy. Song said he didn't think he would receive Vegeta in person, but the guy explained he looked like that because he came flying on a sword. Our boy asked why he was wearing eyeliner, and he said it was just that his eyes were deep set because he had been staying up for several nights. Song was in disbelief that the calm and skilled guy from the chat was actually a lunatic. They went to the dorm, and the master asked if he refined pills in that room. Then he questioned him about using a regular pot and water. He wanted him to refine a liquid for him to see, but our boy said he had class in the afternoon. The guy said it was no problem and asked who the afternoon professor was. Song felt a sense of deja vu and asked if he wouldn't send the professor to the hospital. The guy gave a thumbs up, saying they thought alike, but not to worry, he would only break a leg. Our boy said enough of this. Soft Feather had already beaten up his professor. The guy felt a bit embarrassed, saying he had already seen his perfect strategy. Then he suggested creating a small catastrophe to have the classes canceled. Our boy said it was okay, he would just ask for a leave of absence, and he suggested they go somewhere else. He was afraid they might destroy his campus. He then remembered the plant he had found and asked the master if he still needed it. The guy said yes, he had found some, but the quality was horrible. Our protagonist pointed out that he had one. The master was impressed that he hadn't even noticed its presence. Moreover, it seemed to have grown in a haunted place for over 60 years. Song asked if he needed the plant, and the master said yes. However, he should inform the boy that it had almost priceless value. The 2 boxes he had received before weren't worth a tenth of this. Song said it was okay, since if he hadn't shared the recipe for free, he would never have discovered it. The master accepted, but said that the plant was too valuable and Song, as a beginner, should use it himself. However, since he received it, even though he was embarrassed, he would have to bring something much better for the boy and told him to get inspired. He then tagged the silent monk and asked for some much more advanced and rare techniques. Northern River, on the other hand, asked Soft Feather if she had been seduced by Song since she wanted to help him so much. Soft Feather's father had stopped bothering Saber, who was now back in the group to bother everyone. But the Grandmaster just sent a smiley face and a sword, and with that, Saber said he was fine and would stop. Out of nowhere, the master went to the window and opened it. Our boy was confused when he raised his fingers. He said it seemed like that was how it was going to be and explained that he had sent their location and soon the items would arrive. Our boy asked if the master himself was coming there. The guy replied no, probably the monk would send them on a flying sword, and they were on their way. Then he said it was time to see his practice of making the body-tempering liquid. Walking through the streets, the protagonist asked where they earned money. The master asked if he had money problems and said they had plenty, and he told Song that when he learned to make pills, he would also earn a lot. At that moment, he seemed to notice something and Song asked what it was. He said it was nothing, just that every time he went out, some people followed him. The guy who was almost noticed was trembling. Seeing that lunatic, he couldn't believe he was so strong, but he was determined to recover the ghost spirit to return home. Suddenly, the master stopped at a house and said it was perfect, and they would rent it. Song said he should wait since he didn't have any rental money, but the guy ignored him, rang the bell, and a man opened the door, asking if they were from the delivery service. The master said no, they were looking for a place to rent, and that one seemed perfect. The man said he didn't like living with other people. The master said in that case it was even better and told the man to leave the house, but the man kicked them out, saying he wouldn't accept any amount of money. An hour later, they now had the house. Obviously, the master gave an amount of money the man couldn't refuse. With that, it was time to start the recipe. Song explained about adding water and letting it boil for 5 minutes. The master just observed and couldn't understand how he reached those conclusions if he had never refined pills. Perhaps, even though the boy was old, he had some talent for this job. A few hours later, our boy told him to be careful. The pot exploded and a terrible smell and smoke rose. They approached and the master asked if it was a success. He used some energy and pulled the substance towards his body. He realized it had half the effect of the correct recipe. On the other hand, it was good because it would be great for beginner cultivators. The protagonist asked if it helped him complete a formula, and the master said yes, but he still had more to study. He then told Song he would need his assistance for a few days, and our boy said it was a pleasure to help. With that, he asked where the items the monks sent were, and the master said they would take a bit longer. Our boy then said he would go back to the dormitory, but the master gave him the key to the upstairs floor of the house and said he could stay there. Our boy thanked him and walking through the street thought it was the perfect solution since he needed some privacy. But he saw the same girl surrounded by maniacs in the alley again. He felt deja vu and went towards them again, but this time she noticed him approaching. The girl grabbed the delinquent by the neck, who was ready to receive a kiss. Man, these guys urgently need to go to jail, but she headbutted him in the mouth. An enraged thug said she would pay for that, but she kicked him hard to the ground and threw everyone away. Song was in disbelief. Now it was clear why she got mad at him for saving her earlier. She looked at him and turned away. Our boy wondered why this girl was always surrounded by delinquents. Back at the dormitory, a guy named Momo was talking inside, but he didn't recognize the other voice. There were a guy named Yu. He acted and dressed like a woman but didn't like men. He was talking about having gone out with a girl named Xiao Mai. The guy with glasses said it was incredible, and he started rolling on the floor saying he felt very shy and happy. The only problem was that he was afraid he would have to kiss her tomorrow and felt very insecure. The guy with glasses said he had no experience in that, but the blonde guy said he was the only one who could help. They should practice a slurpy kiss so he could gain experience for tomorrow. The guy was shocked and asked if he had heard wrong, but Yu threw himself, saying it was time for practice. Obviously, the friend pushed him away, and he started crying. Song was outside listening to all this craziness. He wondered if Momo would lose his purity. He didn't know if he should stay outside or go in to help his friend. The problem was that if he went in, he might interrupt things. At that moment, Yu opened the door, all excited. He faced Song, who said it seemed like they had a very good relationship. Zhuge introduced himself and said he was a childhood friend of Momo. Our boy, feeling awkward, said he was the roommate. Hearing the name, Zhuge asked if he had met anyone strange recently, because yesterday someone was asking everyone for information about him. Song realized that it might be someone following the medicine master and now investigating him. But the blonde guy said maybe he had annoyed the wrong people. Entering the room, Song saw his friend desolate on the floor, saying he was tainted. Song said it was okay and asked if Zhuge was a girl or a boy. His friend didn't want to answer about it, so Song told him to just lie down then. Meanwhile, he was waiting for the delivery of the flying sword by the window. Momo said they were going out today and invited him to a party. He needed to forget everything that had happened. With that, he said goodbye and said he was waiting for him. A minute later, a master appeared saying the delivery was about to arrive. He went to the window and told him to watch. From the sky, the sword literally came flying. But seeing the sword, Song asked where the manuals were. The master opened a compartment at the bottom and said they were there. Song found it strange and said it was too small to have enough information, but it was actually a USB drive. Our boy was dismayed that this cultivator was so modern. Song asked how they would send it back, and the master said not to worry about it. He plugged in the USB drive and told him to take a look. On the computer were 2 folders with cultivation techniques. The files were simply named from 1 to 18, which he found too normal. He opened them and saw pictures of the monk practicing, one after another, and said it was all very simple. The master said the most important thing was the sequence. The name itself didn't matter. And our boy imagined himself in combat using technique PNG number 03. The master told him to forget about the names and that he would explain the important parts. First, he needed to establish a foundation, then move to internal practice where he would meditate and overflow his energy. With that, he would finally start entering the cultivation ranks and ascend to the first mortal stage. Observing the techniques, suddenly Song found himself on a lawn with Buddha practicing in front of him. He didn't know if it was something from the master or the person who sent the technique, but he had to take advantage of it. Suddenly, he was back in the room and told the master he had seen someone practicing and asked what it was. The master explained it was a simple illusion that low-level people fell into. When he concentrated cleanly, he could enter that state of hypnosis. Song said it was like having a great master practicing in front of him. After looking multiple times, he had memorized everything but was exhausted. He told the master, who said it was time to practice. With that, they went to the yard, and he began using some techniques. The master gave him tips, and he corrected his movements, but he explained he didn't feel any difference or extra energy. The guy explained he should relax, control the blows, and put force into each attack. Song concentrated once more, delivering a knee strike and a punch that emitted energy. The master congratulated him for successfully using a bit of spiritual Kai. He told him to start the second movement, and they continued practicing. The master thought Song's energy would run out soon since he had only consumed 1 body-tempering liquid and shouldn't have much energy left. But Song was motivated, saying he would complete all 18 movements. He had it in his mind that if he couldn't, he should give up, and he was already on the 5th. However, in the middle of it, he felt his energy depleting. He attempted the 6th movement and collapsed to the ground. The medicine master noticed he was out of energy and wondered if he should help him. Seeing Song's determination, he told him to open his mouth. With that, he gave him more refining liquid, and Song felt the power return to his body. Even though he was tired, he found the motivation to continue practicing until the end. Finally, he had completed all 18 movements and felt powerful despite being exhausted. The master immediately told him to sit and practice another technique before his blood cooled. This technique was to ward off distractions and focus mental energy. Song knew that with this, he would see his true self and wondered what he would see. Strangely, his true self looked exactly like his normal self. He'd wondered if this was because he was still an ordinary mortal. He tried to concentrate even more and direct energy to his heart, but he became dizzy and collapsed. The master explained that he had used too much energy and was now exhausted. Song then explained that his true self looked identical to his normal form and asked why. The master explained that this happened when a person was genuinely good. Their true self didn't need to take a different form if they were already pure. But he thought it was incredible that Song had no blemish on his soul. With that, he said it was time to stop and Song thanked him. The master disappeared, leaving Song unsure how to get up from the ground. Sometime later, he was returning to his room exhausted. But when he opened the door, he saw his cousin. This was the medical thick cousin. Seeing the recipe, she asked if he was trying to kill himself. He said it wasn't quite like that, thinking he didn't know how to explain it. She sat down and said he better give a good explanation. The fool said he joined a weird group that sent this formula. He consumed it to make sure it wasn't a deadly poison. She said he seemed to be telling the truth but advised him to tell no one else to consume it. He invited her to dinner with his friends, but she said she wasn't really interested. With that, she left and he said goodbye. At 6 p.m., he was going to meet his friends. The first friend who arrived asked what happened to Momo. The guy seemed like he wanted to end his life. He saw poor Momo crying and the friend mentioned that there would soon be a sports event. It seemed to be a 5 kilometers race that would exhaust everyone. Luckily, the only one selected from their group was someone named Song Suan. Our boy asked why he was chosen to run 5 kilometers. The friend said it didn't matter. Now that he was chosen, it had to be him. But he thought that since he had started cultivating, it wouldn't be a problem. He raised a can, saying he would win for them. A while later, everyone was passed out from drinking, but alcohol no longer affected him. He decided to return to his room and check the group. People were talking about a white monarch who was about to reappear after 150 years. Song found it strange, especially since even the Northern River guy seemed scared. The crazy saber guy even said he was going to isolated cultivation and didn't want to be contacted. But everyone knew he was scared of the white monarch. He realized it wasn't a good idea to mess with this guy and decided to go to sleep. Meanwhile, in the city, someone was jumping across rooftops. They entered Song's room where he was sleeping on the bunk bed. The intruder exclaimed that Song was the right guy. Seeing the necklace on his neck, they thought it would be easier than expected. They tried to strike, but an aura emanated. The blow was aimed at the seal. The weapon ricocheted. At that moment, the intruder became dizzy as if they had been poisoned. They started coughing up blood and realized they would have to return to their master. Meanwhile, the master in the hotel was waiting for his lackey to return with the item he had requested. The lackey knocked on the door and was told to enter. As soon as he opened it, he collapsed on the floor, exhausted. The master asked what had happened, and with purple eyes, the lackey said he had been poisoned. The master, alarmed by the level of poison, pulled out an antidote pill, thinking that Song Shuang was more dangerous than he had imagined. The problem was that even his antidote hadn't worked. He was afraid that Song would use the poison's direction to find them, so he jumped out of the hotel. Meanwhile, our boy was waking up peacefully at 5 a.m. He smelled a strange scent of blood and wondered if a thief had appeared since the door was open. He saw a blade on the ground and realized it looked like a sword. If that was the case, it wasn't the work of an ordinary thief, as they wouldn't know how to use such a weapon. He then wondered if someone might be after his life. Trying to trace the possibilities, he knew that if it was because of the medicine master, they would have gone after the master and not him. He remembered everything that happened with Saw Feather and the item he received and wondered if the person she mentioned back then was behind this. Walking through the dormitories, a huge came running, calling for him. They asked if he had found the guy who was hunting him. Our boy said no. Jules then passed all the information he had gathered from the students about the guy who had been asking around. He was 1.83 meters tall, with an accent from a nearby city, and provided all the basic characteristics. Our boy realized this was near the temple. He was heading to the medicine master's house when he saw a girl coming out. She grabbed an alchemy pot from the back of a car and kicked it, making it grow. He found it odd and was sure this girl wasn't normal. The girl called his name and told him to come help because she was a lady. Carrying the furnace, he asked how she knew about him. She said she had a close relationship with the medicine master, so it was normal for her to know. He asked if she was his wife or something, and she said no. For now, she was just a disciple. However, since the medicine master was in town, she had to come here to bring the stove to help him. At that moment, the master appeared with a lot of smoke, saying he had been waiting for them. He asked Song if he had been attacked last night and now understood why he hadn't died. Song said yes, and that the person left this blade in his room. Smelling the blood, the master said the attacker had already killed multiple people and asked how Song felt. Song, ever the psychotic, said he felt excited. The girl and the master commented on how peculiar he was. The master then explained that he had placed a barrier on the boy that poisoned anyone who attacked him, which was why he survived. The master apologized for involving Song in this. Song said it was okay since it was thanks to the master that he survived. Then he showed the ghost spirit, saying he thought people were after it. The medicine master said it was a possibility. The girl next to him said she would exterminate everyone if Song gave it to her. The master knocked her on the head, saying she would hinder the boy's cultivation. Song then asked if there were techniques to detect people who were following him. The master said it was very easy and started looking through some files of a certain scholar named Shanggong. Our boy asked who that was, and the master explained he was known as a nuclear bomb because someone had thrown one at him and he survived. The master then said he found files on how to detect those following using mental energy. Song then had an idea. If the person was affected by poison, they would have to buy the antidote from herb shops. The medicine master said it was possible and listed the 4 ingredients needed to make the antidote. He handed them to Song and thanked him. Meanwhile, on Butterfly Spirit Island, Soft Feather was reading the cultivator's newspaper. She saw something about a floating island that caught her attention. She saw that the place was in Donghai and thought about going there for fun. But then a guy appeared and asked where Soft Feather thought she was going. She said she saw a cute place and wanted to visit and asked her father to go with her. He said yes, but she would first have to familiarize herself with the contract formations. Excited, she ran off, saying she would do that now. The father found it strange and wondered if she had any friends to like this video to help Mamoru make more juicy content for his viewers. Activate the cheeky little bell, and I'm out.